Welcome back to Razmafzar TV, to all our subscribers and members, and also welcome to Bede from Australia. Hi, Bede, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good to have you back here. And we are going today to talk about a very important collection or different collections which are kept in Solingen Klingenmuseum. Klingenmuseum in German means blade museum. So they have only arms and armor. And we are going to talk about that. We are going mostly to talk about ancient Iran. And they have, from ancient Iran, of course, bronze and copper, bronze, and iron weapons. And then we also have from Islamic period Iran some items like qameh, qaddare, khanjar. They have some Indian items, and they have also some Ottoman, some African, some Indonesian as well. Today, the focus will be on Persian, but also we will show some selective items from the other collections. So let us go ahead and see. Bede, have you, I'm sure, what a question. I'm sure you've heard of Klingenmuseum. Who hasn't, right? In Germany, right?
Oh yeah. Well, Solingen, yeah, it's a major in its own time producer of sword blades and
Yes.
things like that went all over the world. Very popular in North Africa and Sudan, actually.
Yes, exactly.
So that
Yes.
One of my friends has got a Sudanese Cascara type sword.
Yes.
It wasn't exactly the same as a Cascara, but it had a German-made blade that looked exactly like a late Middle Ages arming sword.
Yes.
It had bullets and everything. I mean, if you saw it, you would have no idea it came from Africa, because it looked like it. It even had the kind of Andrea Ferrara type marks on it and all this kind of stuff. And it was actually a really beautiful blade. It was in a hippopotamus hide sheath and everything. So my friend two of my friends independently worked on it, and it ended up remounted as a European medieval sword because it was effectively. These don't turn up in Australia that often. Cascaras, I've handled quite a few because I've seen them at antique arms fairs and things like that, but they're not that common. But the majority that I saw actually had European blades made particularly for the Sudanese market. And these swords, the blade shape, because they look medieval European to us, because it was, modern Europeans that made them and were influenced by that. But the blades that they were replacing or supplementing or whatever, because they couldn't get enough, are basically those early Islamic Arab two-edged swords.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting that Solingen would be the the kind of the hub of this trade, where Tuareg, Sudanese, all kinds of people, when they could, were buying these European swords. And that in literature in Iran, European sword blades were well thought of. I mean, particularly for straight swords and things like that, because the steel was usually reasonably good. I mean, it wasn't as beautiful as wooded steel, but it certainly was functional. And the level of skill of the smiths, or even in these huge production areas, the skill level was so high that everybody appreciated it.
Absolutely.
Same in India too, they appreciate it.
Absolutely. And just to mention that later on with Bede, we are going to talk about Klingenthal in France. And this initiation of Klingenthal was they wanted to make a competition to Solingen. They brought some engaged some smiths from Solingen who came to France and set up the Klingenthal factory. Later on, French smiths joined them, but the early ones were German smiths who were paid a lot to come in Klingenthal. We are going to talk about that. That's very interesting to see
It's
that.
always sensible to bring in experts,
Yes,
and it's even more sensible to train your own experts up using their skills.
yes,
So no one would find this unusual, I think. Not in the
yes.
modern world anyway.
We're going to talk about this, and okay, these are this collection from Solingen. Before we go ahead, I need to mention some. There are two major collections in German museums. One of these items of copper, bronze, and iron items from ancient Iran is kept in Solingen. Another one is kept in Archäologisches Museum in German, Archaeological Museum in Frankfurt, where I here. And these two, well, come from the time in early 20th century, and so end of 19th, early 20th century, where many of these items were unfortunately looted in Iran. And there has been lots of discussions, of course, and then sold in international markets. Today, these are happen from time to time, but it's extremely difficult, thanks God. And because now Iranian archaeological teams and government and so they, of course,
Yeah.
want to protect the heritage, right? So
Yeah, it's amazing the incredibly rich heritage. I remember reading books when I was in my teens about people going there as archaeologists and saying that there was a whole field of mounds and every single one of them had been dug up
yeah,
by, because people were trying to make a living and there was all this metal in the ground and other people would pay money for it.
yes,
But now that, the
yes, um,
archaeologists are going through it, they find more and more things. These are very interesting, but the ones they're digging up actually now give us more knowledge because they're in context.
yes,
And these people probably bought these on the art market
yes,
without ever knowing exactly what place they came from or
yes,
whatever.
yes,
This is unfortunate when it happens. But on the other hand, the items themselves aren't responsible for that. And these are, in their own ways, they're tools, but in some of them are at the level of works of art.
yes. Um, these are leaf-shaped blades from Luristan. Here is 2,600, 2,400, before Christ or BCE. I need to mention that the same examples which are excavated are in National Museum of Iran, which is in my book Arms and Armor from Iran. There are examples of
Yeah.
them, and they are really solid. They are real beautiful. Our colleagues here from Solingen Museum say that okay, of course they're from Luristan. They say Tape, we don't, for Persian, we don't say tepe, we say tape. Tape Gian, tape means the hill, right? And copper, they just say that. So you see, these are beautiful, aren't they?
They are. What strikes me is that the massiveness of the blades
Yeah,
makes me think of, like obsidian stone blades.
yeah,
These are like somebody has a tradition of making those blades, and when they move on to metalwork, they say, "We like these big, chunky, leaf-shaped blades." Because in stone, it's much more important to have the strength there, whereas in bronze, you could make them very thin and they'd still work. But they
yes,
like it's an aesthetic choice. They like the look of this. And
yes,
they do look really good. I like the handles are kind of like very ergonomic looking, if you know what I mean. They look
yeah, yeah.
very well designed.
And
But
what
as
is,
a
God,
yeah, I was going to say as a knife rather than a dagger handle, this is more a practical knife handle, isn't it?
yes. And they have all of them of these shapes, also those excavated ones in my books. You can see that they have guard. And what is very
Mhm.
interesting for me, they use cast on method on them. So they cast, first the blade, then they have a cast on method. So they have the handle which cast on the blade. And this is a very normally for other areas of Iran, later technology, but they already used it for this type of blades, which is very beautiful, very beautiful. And when you hold them in your hand, as Bede, you said it, they're really solid. They are really solid.
Yeah,
God, they're solid, right? Yeah.
yeah. Think more, really high end chef's knife than little pocket knife kind of thing. This I'm just looking. I'm trying to see how long they are to see if it's in the description. No, I can't see it.
Unfortunately, I don't have it, but they follow a pattern. In my book, I measured those excavated ones. They're like
I
this. I had it in my hand like
so they're
this.
quite large. They're
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
large.
These are like
Yeah.
this.
So
Like this.
verging from dagger to short sword.
Yes. They're
Um,
really, yeah,
not yeah, not gladius size, but
yeah, no.
Tutankhamun's dagger size kind of thing.
Yes. I love this shape. You think as well
Oh
that
yeah.
they're beautiful. They're really unbelievable. And they have
This is
always this intricate design in the handle. Do you see that? Always.
if if you saw this in a movie, you'd think that a prop designer went right over the top and tried to make something look really exotic. But this is a real thing that
Yeah.
people made. And looking at this, 2600 to 2400 BCE.
Yes, PC.
So this is at the time that the Elamites were just starting to build up their power, and that in Iraq, the first cities had been going for a few hundred years.
Yes.
Um, so it's really at the start of exciting times. To think
Really.
that the weapons, or I mean, this is a weapon and a tool. I mean, uh, to think that they're so sophisticated so early, not just in the way they're made, but in the concept and design is remarkable. Because those cross guards are more to stop your hands sliding onto the blade than they are to. They're not for fencing. They're to
Mhm.
make the blade more effective.
Yes.
And you see that it's like on modern knives, like on Bowie knives and things like that.
Yes.
It's exactly the same idea.
Yes.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah.
So we can see, take a look more. So, of course, the handle here is broken or the tank. You see that here? And this is this, so some of them, as you see, they have fullers. Most of
Yeah.
them I handle, they have fullers, but this one is, it has like deep fullers or like mid ribs, so there
And they're
is some,
quite intricate as well.
yeah,
And this is,
really.
bear in mind how early this is in terms of, we think of fullers in swords as being quite, advanced features, but here's daggers that have them um, like 4,500 years ago. It's
Exactly.
amazing. And this is in Luristan, which, it was up country from Elam. Um, but it's not like a major center like one of the kingdoms of Iraq or something like that. This is a group of people living in southwestern Iran or central western Iran who were producing this level of stuff.
It
Now,
was Solingen of Iran of that time.
yeah, I mean, this is they must have had a huge metal manufacturing industry, considering how many bronzes have been looted and how many bronzes have still been found there.
Yes, still.
And you've the of course we think in like in Eurocentric discussions about Bronze Age stuff, they're always talking about, oh, the rarity of tin made bronze very expensive, but there must have been a lot of tin sources. These aren't importing tin from Cornwall, for instance.
Yeah, and
These are
they
using
exported it so much. Thank you for saying that. This Eurocentric view that I mean, in Iran, there are so many, still they find so many bronze weapons
yeah,
everywhere.
I mean, we're talking tons of bronze that survived. I mean, I remember seeing an article on an Elamite bronze statue, which had so much bronze in it. I mean, the amount of metal was enormous. And this is
Enormous.
one of two cast bronze statues. And they were made such a long time ago
Yeah.
that people are, puzzled how they had the technology to cast this much bronze in one go. And the next step is how they had that much bronze in the first place. These were metallurgically sophisticated cultures all through
Yes.
the mountains and those plains. I mean, I keep mentioning the Elamites because the Elamites had writing, so therefore we've got written names of people. And these people are sometimes I think there are inscriptions, but they're just Akkadian rather than the native language, I think. I'm not
Look at
sure.
this one bead. It looks as if there are two eyes and one mouth.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like little
And these
wrinkles
are
on
the
the.
hair. Look at this, the hair.
Oh yeah, Marge. It's Marge Simpson for sure.
Marge Simpson, exactly. It just,
I mean, it's just
Marge Simpson
it's
is good.
crazy
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, because the human eye is always trying to match
Yeah.
uh, features to
Yeah.
faces, whatever.
Yes.
But on the
Yes.
other hand, really sweetly made.
Yes. And now we go to early also in Luristan and also in northern Iran. You see that they are
Mhm,
produced mostly. Also, we have archaeological examples of them in Iran again, in
mhm.
National Museum of Iran. You see that they are tanked, so they cast it bronze or copper. They cast, and then in the early times they didn't have a cast on as those ones we saw before, which are,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, they are normally attributed to used by Elamite, they say. But then they used a perishable material, they call it Iranian archaeologists, be it
Mhm.
wood or whatever. They used it here, bone or whatever. They used it here, so they pushed it and they had this handle. This was the
Which is
earliest
exactly the
technology.
way that many modern knives are made, and
Yes,
knives have been made ever since. This
yes,
is much, I mean, one of those blades without a handle that you had earlier, you saw that there were two rivets. So
yes,
it kind of had a not a tang, but a little tab, and it was riveted onto the handle. This
yes.
is always considered to be a weak structure unless you're just using it for stabbing, because
This one, this one.
any sideways pressure can I mean, if you hit something really hard with the edge of the blade, you can actually snap off the handle. Whereas
Yes,
a tang is much better at handling that. But of course, if you're just stabbing with it, it doesn't make any difference. A modern example is a Indonesian keris.
yeah,
The connection to the handle is very weak, but they're mainly used for stabbing, so it doesn't
yeah,
matter.
yes,
And yeah, two fingers go onto the blade anyway, so that you've got so much more control. These are also quite sophisticated looking blades. If you saw these blades made of iron, second century BC would have been not unusual, but these are again much older
much older.
and bronze. I mean, the reason we've got so many bronze weapons is bronze survives better in the ground than iron does.
Yeah, of course. That's the reason. Yeah,
But
that's
again,
absolutely.
it's a bit. I'm just looking because I've known people have had problems with tanged knife blades where the modern maker, and I'm talking about re, reconstructions rather than modern knives, didn't know enough to put rounded corners where the tang joins the blade, so they snap
Yes,
because there's a sharp edge and it forms a grip crack and they snap. These all seem to have been very carefully made
very.
so that the tang won't snap.
And solid tanks, right? Solid.
Oh, yeah, good, strong looking tangs.
Yeah.
And of course, the advantage of bronze is that bronze work hardens, which means that to put an edge on it, you've got to kind of hammer the edge
Yes.
and then polish it. Uh, but when you cast bronze, it's actually quite soft. And you could decide, oh, I want my tang to be hard near the base, softer up the top. So if I hit something really hard, it'll bend and not break.
Yeah.
And they do that with, obviously, you do this with steel swords as well. But
Yes.
it's very easy to do with bronze because bronze is a very manageable metal. You can do a lot of things to bronze without having to have enormous control of temperature and things like that. But
Yes.
see, these look like quite functional daggers.
Yes. Very.
Uh,
Very.
and again, the age
Look
is
at this
incredible.
speed. The next two also very nice, right?
They're also, yeah, and you can see that they're trying out ideas about how to make a better dagger. So the one on my right, number
No, 6.
it
Yes.
it seems to have a flat ridge
Yeah.
down the center of the blade, as everybody else is using a peaked ridge but this is like somebody thought, I wonder how this would work. Making it in bronze, it's relatively straightforward to make the mold. You could carve a a figure out of wood of what you want the dagger to look like, and if you like it, then press it into sand and make a sand mold and cast directly into that. Or you could, if it was really intricate, you could carve it out of wax and then use lost wax casting. But I'm looking at these and they seem like the number 5. See how it's got shoulders halfway up the tang?
Yes. Let me show it for our viewers. Here,
Yeah.
it has shoulder. Absolutely.
So this may relate to a specific shape of handle that
Yeah.
required that. I
Yes.
mean, Bronze Age daggers have such a wide range of forms,
Yes.
and things that, like modern daggers, you could look at a Kanjali and say the big crescent pommel. Well, you're holding it like that. This gives you a lot of control and all that kind of stuff. But there's Bronze Age daggers that also have big crescent-shaped pommels, which mean you don't hold them that way because it would stick into your wrist. But
Yes.
if you hold them that way, then you've got a lot of control of how you're using it.
Yes.
So, I mean, sophisticated design.
Pete, look at this one. I've seen
Wow.
again excavated examples of that in Iranian museums as well. This is very interesting. What is
Oh, no, I've never seen one of these before. Is it was it originally straighter, or is it this the normal shape they come out?
No, I think this is the normal shape because similar examples are also found in Iran. This can be that they were all bent to this shape, you know.
Oh, no, no. So therefore, it's designed as a kind of
Yeah.
striking weapon, I assume, with the point forward.
Yes.
To me, if I saw the tang side of it, I would assume that the upper part was sharpened.
Yeah. Exactly.
Uh, but I, as I say, I've never seen anything like it before in my life.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I see, obviously there's lots of things excavated, and you don't get to see
Yeah.
examples of a lot of them.
I'm
But
in
I,
discussion with Iranian museums, and I don't have so much time. But we would like to classify, and we would also invite you, Beat. We would like to classify as many as we can. There are in my book some of them, arms
yeah,
armor from Iran, but to have a big classification of all excavated bronze and iron weapons in Iran.
that I think that would be really important,
Yeah, yeah,
for everybody,
yeah,
because there's clearly. I mean, I've been looking at bronze weapons for 40 years, and this is completely out of the park. I've never seen anything like it. And that makes me wonder what other things that there they've been excavated but maybe not published yet, or
Do you remember when we wrote for a Parsi journal, just some 1 year or 2 years ago? When was that? And then Dr. Nokande, Professor Nokande, head of National Museum of Iran, wrote about those shields he found. They found
oh
in
yeah,
that
the
bit. Did you
strange
see
shields.
how
Yeah,
huge they were? Those
yeah,
shields. Because normally we always thought in Bronze Age weapons they had in Iran, I'm talking about, they had smaller shields. We found only small shields. All of a
yeah,
sudden, this excavation corrected our attitude or what we thought. They had large shields. We didn't know that. So
I think that's
that's,
the
yeah,
wonderful thing, that even though, and sometimes things have been excavated 20 years ago,
yeah,
but there's so much stuff, and there's only a limited number of archaeologists to write it up and publish it, that
yeah.
things start turning up. We had a thing, a paleontological example of this in Australia. A couple of paleontologists during COVID couldn't go out in the field to do anything, so they started going backwards through museum collections, and they discovered the earliest, I think, the earliest skeletons of platypuses that had been sitting in a collection for 120 years.
So
And
funny.
these they were basically little bits of jaw and teeth. And adult platypuses don't have teeth, but baby platypuses do, and they disappear as they grow up. But here were adult platypuses from millions of years ago, with teeth, showing that they developed with teeth, and then they'd given up teeth because they didn't need them, because they had this bill that was working much better. So that kind of thing, there's real discoveries can be made in
Yes.
museums, even of stuff that's been there for years. This
So
is amazing.
so far we had very early one, which were those leaf-shaped blades, although they had the cast-on method, then tanked ones. Now we
Mhm.
move on to the next technology in Iran. And
Yeah.
yes, again, guys, these are cast in one piece. It's not two piece. These are cast in one piece, but we call it a further technology in archaeological circles. The reason is instead of putting a wooden or bone or whatever ivory material as a handle, you just cast it in one piece. So the handle is there, and then you put on top of it some perishable material, which we will
Grip
see,
scales and
like these ones, right? You see that, Pete? Like these ones, which
yeah, and
survive.
remember what I was saying about those giant pommels?
Yes,
These are
that's
meant.
what you were saying,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But let's
Well,
come
those
back to
ones.
it.
Yeah,
These ones lost it,
the,
right?
yeah. Now this may sound really strange, but I have handled an iron sword with this shape.
We have them. We will see it here as well. We have them.
And it was excavated by chance during the First World War when someone was digging a trench in Syria, and it was
Ah,
from what is now known to be the Kingdom of Mitanni,
yes,
and somebody bought it back as a souvenir. So not documented. We tried to convince them to do that, or put
yes,
it through an auction so it could be provenanced
yes,
and all that. But it was a family keepsake.
yes.
But it also had little circular designs on the blade. I was so amazed to see something of iron that looked like a bronze sword.
Yes, we see them,
Uh,
and actually in Iranian museums excavated in iron, the same shape we will find it.
yeah,
But let's
yeah.
go back here and take a look at that. Here you see that there's some material of the handle remaining. Do you see that
Oh,
bead?
wow, yeah.
This
That's
and
very rare.
yeah, and now look at this bead. These for our viewers, subscribers. These are rivet holes. These are
Mm.
meant that they just put the rivet through the handle, right? So that material, very interesting.
So essentially, what we're looking at is uh, where other knives had tangs, these have like flat panels with raised edges that you fit maybe a carved ivory or bone
Yes.
or wooden piece into, and then it's held in by probably a combination of rivets and maybe a bit of glue.
And
Um,
this and glue definitely, because you can find, if you look at them, we have examples of remaining. And they analyze that they're glue, they're natural glue as well. Like
yeah,
they and then look at this bit. This part also holds part of the handle, which is put inside. You
but
see that?
folded over, so you've got this much more complex um, image of this day. But see, the general shape of them is really elegant too.
Very in advanced technology for that time, beat.
Oh yeah,
Unbelievable,
yeah.
unbelievable.
I mean, this is again, some of these things are quite beautiful past their archaeological interests. They're really sculptures in metal,
Yeah, they
and
are beautiful.
I'm somewhat taken aback to think what they must have looked like when they were new and they had their grip scales and they had their scabbards and whatever. I'm
Yes,
sure somebody will try and reproduce them.
yes. So you can take a look at them, and then some of them have decorations. In Iranian museums, some of them have snake as decoration. You see a snake,
Oh wow.
yeah, its fangs and things like that.
Well, that would be
Beautiful.
a very appropriate thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just looking at the sheer quality of the casting. And I mean, the number one has what looks like a finger guard kind of shape near
Oh, let me
the
just show it
letters.
for our viewers. Good catch. I didn't realize that. This one,
And because it's double-edged, you can use the finger guard either side.
either side. Yes.
It's very,
Reminds me of these late Sasanian swords, right? They
yeah,
have this
yeah,
feature, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's practical, so people keep reinventing it because
Yeah.
it's useful. But
Beautiful.
yeah, great,
Beautiful.
great
And
pieces.
now we
Oh,
move on. You see that now, and okay, we will talk about them. This is materials of them, ivory or bone or whatever, survived. See that? What does it remind us of? Later, Yatagan, right?
oh yeah, yeah. Actually, people have commented on this for years that the Yatagan Yatan hilts are very similar. But there's daggers that were made in Spain during the Moorish occupation, which also were used in Europe, eared daggers, they're called. And, you know, the difference in time is so great that there can be no influence. But on the other hand, people invent the same things.
Yes.
Uh, and these just appeal to people's, you know, aesthetic
Pete,
sense.
look at the length of this one.
Yeah, that is very impressive. And look at the elegant shape of the grip for wielding a sword of that length. I mean, that would give you a firm grip. You could strike, you could stab. It's really a very attractive shape.
Yeah.
This is the kind of things that should be in fantasy movies, not
Yes.
the clumsy stuff that they do. No, I'm not criticizing the props makers or anything because they're working with what they've got. But if they knew about stuff like this,
Yeah.
you'd see some very elegant
The
things in
hero
movies.
comes in with such a sword, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Look at them
oh,
now. We can have it. These are beautiful because they have the original handle.
yeah. Well, sometimes the white material on some of those handles, I think, was calcite or some kind of stone.
Yes.
And it was carved to look like bone, but of course it lasts much longer than bone. But
Yes. Some of them
these,
are stone, indeed.
yeah,
Indeed.
they're so elegant.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
any knife collector today that went out and saw a copy of one of these in a shop would say, "Oh, yeah, even a copy would be a good thing to own because they're
Look at
such
the
a beautiful."
design. Look at the design bead.
I
Look at
mean,
the
it's just
handle.
standing.
So beautiful. So
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. You could see these would be the prized possession of whoever they were buried with, because he's going into the next life
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
he wants the best equipment, so the gods take him seriously. Uh, I, I'm as far as I know, these are usually only well, when there is excavation, they're usually only associated with male tombs, but I think there may be the odd one that was in a female tomb as well. I'm not saying that there were women warriors in Luristan, but I think the prestige value of these daggers was so high that if you wanted to show your respect for somebody,
Yes.
that putting one of these in the tomb would be a good thought. But
Guys,
oh,
look
look
at
at
this, Pete. Now you can see the
yeah,
combination or the interplay between
yeah.
bronze and the handle. Do you see how beautiful look? And look.
The number 8 is incredibly complex in its shape.
Incredible. Yes.
And I mean, those wraparound pieces of the blade or the handle, I should say,
Yeah.
when you look at the way the kind of the central part of the grip scales is basically segmented, it's got raised pieces, I mean, this is quite over the top stuff. I'm
Mm.
wondering again whether those folded over pieces were they part of the hand grip? Because when you think of it, the blade starts below them. That hand grip looks as though, in order to, well, if you're just gripping it like that, you're not too worried. But say number 8, the down curved part of the pommel would be a bit of a threat to your hand. So maybe you held it further down. I'm looking at it, I'm assuming that the pommel is bilobe, like there's two
Yeah.
matching pieces. And so it probably isn't quite
I
so
mean,
threatening.
I held them, of course, in my hands when I was measuring them, and okay, this one was no problem because we have similar shapes in Iranian excavated, similar shapes. It was as if
Yeah.
they were producing different types all the time. This is no problem. You can get in forward grip. You can get it also in the downward grip, and this one forward grip, downward grip was no problem. In forward grip, interestingly, it is enough space again for your hand to hold it, right? So
Mhm.
this one comes here. So you can hold it. So now they come and then go and bite into your hand. That's what you're trying. I think
Yeah.
you are
Well, I'm
saying.
thinking about, yeah, yeah. Because again, without a sense of scale, I find daggers are very deceptive in photographs. I remember when the Suleiman the Magnificent exhibition came to Sydney the first time, I managed to get a copy of the catalogue from Washington, because the catalogue, when the exhibition opened, they hadn't finished printing the catalogue, so there were no catalogues available. So I read the catalogue before I went, And there was this lovely dagger in there, and it looked like it was about that long,
Mm.
but it was, that long.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, exactly. And guys, just
They
one
had
thing
to
I would
measure
like to
it.
say. Pete, they
Yeah,
are large daggers. They're not small knives. They're large
yeah.
daggers,
That's
right?
that's
These
well,
are,
that's what I understood from when you were saying when you were measuring them. And I mean, if you unless you have the measurements in front of you and you pay attention, you can sometimes they look so delicate, but
yes,
yeah, this big and they're serious. I mean, they're pretty, but they're serious fighting weapons as well.
yes. And now some of them in the museum, they have the top of the handle there as well.
Yeah, see, look how well they're carved.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. It's really
clearly
beautiful.
there was a very successful industry going on in this in this.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
it's sophisticated. It's functional. It's
Yeah,
symbolic. It's got everything going for it.
yes. You see here more examples.
Oh, yeah, again, they've got very elegant shapes, broad bases to the blades, tapering down to very sharp
Do you see,
tips.
Pete, this one? Some of them have this like circular shape here.
Oh,
Penannular,
wow.
they call that, right? This circular shape. And excavated items, again, you see it in Iran, not only from Luristan, but these shapes, especially, you find it in excavated items from the north in Marlik by Dr. Izzat Negahban, who
Oh,
made
right.
these
Big
Marlik
fun
excavations.
look
Yeah.
at that. Okay. Because I've seen material published from Marlik because it's a
Yes.
very famous
And
site.
you see that interest. Okay, you can see there's some stylistic differences between Luristan and Marlik, or also in Gilan, Tepik, on north or Mazandaran. There are stylistic differences because normally in the north they tend to be longer and a bit different. But so it was a huge industry in North Iran to produce
Yeah.
weapons as well.
I
Huge
mean, the
industry.
sheer quantity of because bronze is always an expensive metal compared to iron. But when you consider the quantity of bronze that's being made, the mining must have been a really big industry.
What
Um,
I talked, because I saw like thousands of them in Iranian museums, in in the National Museum of Iran, different in Tabriz or in Mashhad or everywhere. They told me, but unfortunately, I have not been in the Museum of Luristan in Iran. But they told me, "What, you think we have thousands of them? Go to Luristan Museum to see how many they have."
well, that's amazing, isn't it?
It was, they say you need to
Oh,
stay there for 1 year to measure all of them. That amount they have, all right? So
yeah.
you
This
know,
this is kind of when you read the old archaeological reports before this was properly excavated, when archaeologists are being told, "Oh, they've just arrested somebody and he had a bag full of bronze weapons. You should go out to this place and see what it's like." And they see just a plane full of burials, and every one originally had some weapons in it, maybe a bronze pot or whatever. And you just can't conceive of how wealthy in terms of metal this area must have been. Zagros Mountains in general, we've got Uplift Mountains. They're obviously going to be rich in minerals and things like that. But
and
there,
one thing we would like to mention, and please guys remember, when you have shamshirs, they always have different, because they're made differently, they might look, if you measure them, everyone is different. But then the mold, they had molds, they cast bronze, so they shed different shapes of molds and they molded, like, and then you see all of a sudden, hey, why are they almost look the same, right? Because
mass
they used it.
production.
Yeah, exactly. That's
This
it.
is early production.
That's
I
it.
mean, the thing about this is that there's been some discussion among archaeologists and anthropologists about lost wax casting for
Yeah.
small objects, whether they found stone molds of things like arrowheads and that, whether they're actually used for making wax um, uh, images to then use in lost wax casting, because that stone mold could be used 10,000 times.
Yes.
Whereas if you use it to directly cast bronze, which people definitely did,
Yes.
it may only last for about 10 or 20 castings, because
Yes.
the hot metal going into the stone gradually creates cracks and fractures and when you're taking the thing out too. I mean, the metal shrinks, but sometimes it grabs onto the stone and damages it. So when you hear about huge numbers of these things, you've got to think, how sophisticated was the mass production? Did they say make a dozen molds and then make thousands of knife blades out of them and ship them all over the country?
Yeah.
And I mean, you got a donkey and you put a pack on it, you can carry a fair number of knife blades.
Yeah.
I remember Stephen Stelby telling me that in China, they've discovered dagger axe blades that are purely ingots. They made them in the form of a dagger axe blade. They shipped them all over the place. And when they got to wherever they were going, well, yeah, you could turn them into a dagger axe, but most people melted them down and made something else out of them. It was just that the dagger axe shape was more, immediately practical than just making an ingot. Whereas in say the Near East, they've recently found off Turkey and that ships full of ingots of copper or bronze being traded in the Bronze Age because obviously it's valuable. Oh, these are elegant, aren't they?
Look at this speed.